Hi and welcome to section 3.1 for Econ 2 on the AQA exam board. What will we see today? Today we'll be looking at economic growth, short and long run economic growth, and the Keynesian and classical view for economic growth and how we can show this on a diagram. But first, what is economic growth? Economic growth is a positive change in the value of real GDP. We usually measure economic growth rates on a yearly basis, i.e., what was the GDP last year, what is the GDP this year, and how has that changed. By finding out the percentage change, we can find how much the economy has grown, or how much the economy has shrunk. A negative value for economic growth means that an economy is contracting, which means that GDP is getting smaller and is falling. There are two types of economic growth. These are short-run economic growth and long-run economic growth. Let's first look at long-run economic growth. Long-run economic growth is where the productive capacity of the economy increases. It is a sustainable source of economic growth and can arise due to a variety of different factors, such as an increase in technology that makes individuals and firms more efficient, an increase in labour productivity due to education, training and retraining, or any other positive supply side factor. Changes to the supply side of the economy are key to long-run economic growth. This is why governments use supply side policies. Now let's look at how this economic growth is represented on a classical diagram. Here we have an economy whereby we have aggregate demand of a level of AD, and the initial long-run aggregate supply curve is LRAS 1. This leads to a price level in the market of PL1 and an output level of Y1. Now suppose that the government uses some supply side policies that increase the productive potential of the economy. This causes the economy to be able to produce more goods and services, and we represent this graphically by the long-run aggregate supply curve shifting outwards, i.e. from LRAS 1 to LRAS 2. For the same level of aggregate demand, the economy will be in equilibrium at point B, which is where the price level is lower at PL2 rather than PL1, and output is higher. Output is now Y2 rather than Y1. The long-run economic growth is represented by the movement from Y1 to Y2. The economy has grown by a real level of national output of Y2 minus Y1, and this was all facilitated by supply-side policies increasing the productive potential of the economy. Now let's look at what long-run economic growth looks like in a Keynesian AD-AS diagram. Our economy has a long-run aggregate demand level of AD, and its initial long-run aggregate supply curve is LRAS 1. This leads to the price level in the market being PL1 and the level of output being Y1. The government then chooses to use some supply-side policies that increase the productive potential of the economy. This is represented by the long-run aggregate supply curve shifting outwards from LRAS 1 to LRAS 2. With the same level of aggregate demand, the economy will be in a new long-run equilibrium at point B, where the price level is lower, PL2 rather than PL1, and output in the economy is higher, Y2 rather than Y1. Long-run economic growth is represented by the increase in output moving from Y1 to Y2. Now let's look at short-run economic growth. Short-run economic growth is caused by a variety of different factors. These factors can either affect the short-run aggregate supply curve or aggregate demand. For example, short-run economic growth can arise due to an increase in confidence levels in an economy. If economic agents are feeling more confident, it will more than likely result in consumer spending increasing and firms increase in their levels of investment. As consumption and investments are components of aggregate demand, and as these two components have increased, aggregate demand will also increase. This increase in confidence is represented by an outward shift in aggregate demand. We can show this shift in aggregate demand on a classical AD-AS diagram. Initially, our economy is at point A, where aggregate demand crosses the LRAS curve and the SRAS curve. At point A, the price level in the economy is PL1 and output is Y1. The increase in confidence level in the economy causes aggregate demand to shift outwards. It shifts from AD1 to AD2. This causes the economy to be in a new equilibrium at point B, with a greater level of output and a higher price level. The increase in output from Y1 to Y2 can be seen as short-run economic growth. This is short-run economic growth because in the short run, firms and factors of production are willing to supply more goods and services to the market. However, in the long run, firms will have to pay factors of production a higher factor payment. This causes the short-run aggregate supply curve to shift inwards from SRAS1 to SRAS2. This results in the economy being at a new equilibrium at point C, where output is the same as it was before we had the shift in aggregate demand, the same as Y1, and the price level is even higher than it was in the short run, PL2, and higher than it was initially before aggregate demand shifted. The price level is now PL3. This is why this type of economic growth is known as short-run economic growth, because the economy can grow in the short run, but in the long run, it will move back to its long-run aggregate supply curve, which is the maximum amount that an economy can produce. We can also show short-run economic growth on a Keynesian AD-AS diagram. Here we have an economy where the initial equilibrium is the point where AD1 crosses the long-run aggregate supply curve, which is at point A, with a price level PL1 and a level of real output of Y1. Then there is an increase in the level of confidence in the economy, or a fiscal or monetary stimulus. This causes the aggregate demand curve to shift outwards from AD1 to AD2. This outward shift in aggregate demand from AD1 to AD2 causes a new equilibrium in the economy with a higher price level and a higher level of real output. The increase in output from Y1 to Y2 is economic growth in the short run. It is short-run economic growth because the long-run productive potential of the economy has not increased. We can also show short and long-run economic growth on a PPF curve. Here we have an economy that is producing two goods, good X and good Y. We also have 2 points, point 1 and point 2. The movement from point 1 to point 2 is short-run economic growth. This is because the economy is producing more goods and services, but the long-run productive potential of the economy has not changed. The movement from point 1 to point 2 results in more of good X being produced, X2 rather than X1, and more of good Y being produced, Y2 rather than Y1. We can also show long-run economic growth on a PPF curve. We can do this by shifting the PPF curve outwards, and this could be a movement from point 2 to point 3. The movement from point 2 to point 3 allows more of both goods to be produced, and the quantity of goods and services produced in the economy increases, which is long-run economic growth.